After Alexander the Great's death, his generals fought over the spoils of war, which included land and titles. One general, Ptolemy I, established a kingdom in Egypt, while another, Seleucus I, founded the Seleucid Empire. His empire stretched from Anatolia to India. There was one more general who did not receive any land after Alexander's death. His name was Parmenion. However, he had a chance to fix that when he defeated an Armenian king and took his daughter captive. He hoped to marry her off to one of his sons and get a hefty dowry. But before he could do anything, he was killed in battle. This defeat would not only have dire consequences for him personally, but it would also change the history of Europe forever. This is the Battle of Adrianople, where Rome came close to losing to a coalition of barbarians. The year is 216 BC and the Roman Republic is at war with the Kingdom of Pontus. It all started when Rome decided to support one of their client kings in Anatolia against the rising threat of King Attalus III of Pergamum. Rome gave the go-ahead to the kings of Epirus and Bithynia to invade Pergamum, but the latter two were defeated. This forced Rome to intervene directly and send an army into Anatolia. Unfortunately, this was a huge mistake because they ended up getting completely annihilated. This army was almost entirely made up of Italian mercenaries, which meant that the Romans didn't even know the terrain. This defeat greatly weakened Rome and left a power vacuum in Anatolia. So Rome decided to finally settle their conflict with King Attalus III once and for all. At the same time, the Gauls had invaded southern Italy and sacked the city of Tarentum. Rome immediately regretted sending that army to Anatolia and recalled them back home. But it was too late. On the road back, they encountered the Gallic army and lost yet another major battle. To make matters worse, the Lusitanians also revolted in Hispania, forcing Rome to disperse their armies even more. Because of this, Rome was forced to sign a peace treaty with King Attalus, which granted him pretty much everything he wanted. This left Rome humiliated and desperate for a win, and that's when they set their eyes on the Kingdom of Pontus. Meanwhile, King Attalus III of Pergamon died and left his kingdom to his nephew, Eumenes II. He continued his uncle's pro-Roman policy, but soon found himself in a difficult position. His cousin, the pretender to the throne, was gathering an army to invade his kingdom. Attalus had made him general of his army, but now he was using this position to grow his own power. Athens went to Rome and asked for help, and soon a Roman army was marching into Anatolia under the command of the consul Gaius Cassius. As always, they were accompanied by a group of allies, including the Chian and Rhodian League. And together they marched on the pretender's capital. They captured it and deposed the pretender, installing Eumenes II as the new king of Pergamum. This victory brought Cassius great popularity. Back in Rome, he was seen as a strong supporter of the populares, a political faction that advocated for the common people. He began amassing an army to crush the remnants of the pretender's army and restore order to the region. The commander of the pretender's forces was Archelaus, who retreated to the mountains after his capital was taken. Here he rallied more troops and gained enough strength to launch a counterattack. He laid siege to the city of Sardis, but Cassius's legate, Manius Achilles, managed to lift the siege and defeat the Pontic army. Once again, Rome had proven victorious in Anatolia and their grip on the region seemed unbreakable. But this was far from true. A little north of Rome in the Hellenic kingdoms, a new challenger was rising, the Kingdom of Macedon. Their king, Perseus, had been plotting for years to expand his domain. Now that Rome was preoccupied with other conflicts, he felt that it was his chance to strike. He formed an alliance with the Kingdom of Pontus, and together they marched south. Perseus led 20,000 foot soldiers and 4,000 cavalrymen, while the Pontic king Attalus sent 6,000 cavalrymen and 3,000 light infantry. Together, this force was around 30,000 men strong and it was marching straight towards Roman Macedonia. When the governor of Macedonia learned about the invasion, he sounded the alarm. 2 Roman legions and a few auxiliary units were stationed in the province at the time, so he called them to defend the border city of Adrianople. These troops were not nearly enough to stop such a large force, so he requested reinforcements from Rome. The consul Lucius Aelius Tibero arrived just in time. He led to more legions, bringing the total number of defenders to around 25,000 men. They fortified the city and prepared for the worst. In the meantime, Perseus was growing impatient. He wanted to defeat Rome once and for all and establish dominance in the region. He wrote a letter to Rome declaring war and demanding submission. Of course, this letter went unanswered. No Roman would ever submit to a Macedonian king. So the two armies faced each other outside the city walls and prepared for battle. According to Polybius, the Roman right wing consisted of infantry, while the cavalry was positioned on both flanks. This meant that the cavalry had to be extremely careful not to let either of the enemy wings outflank them. The battle began with the Roman cavalry charging into the enemy's center, hoping to break their formation. This attack was partially successful as they managed to shatter the cavalry on the Pontic left flank. But at the same time, the Pontic cavalry charged into the Roman right flank. These were elite cataphracts, heavily armored cavalrymen who rode war horses. They crashed into the slow-moving legionaries, broke through the lines and reached the center. But when they looked back, they saw that the rest of their army was decimated. The Romans had reformed their lines and were charging forward themselves. Now it was the cataphracts' turn to panic, and they fled the battlefield. But there was something strange about this battle. The elite cavalry of Pontus, who had broken through the Roman lines earlier, never attempted to relieve their comrades. Instead, they stood by and watched as their fellow cataphracts were slaughtered. Why did they do this? Well, according to Livy, the Pontic cavalry was actually made up of mercenaries. These men were paid to fight for King Attalus, but they didn't care which side they fought for, as long as they got paid. When they saw that the cataphracts were being defeated, they simply fled the battlefield without even trying to fight. With the cavalry routed, it was time for the infantry to finish the job. The Roman infantry charged forward and drove the enemy back into the city. As night fell, both sides retreated to their camps, counting their losses. As soon as the sun came up the next day, the Romans attacked again, and this time they did not hold back. They assaulted the city from all sides, and Perseus's men could not withstand the pressure. After hours of fighting, the Macedonian and Pontic kings were forced to flee the city, ending the Battle of Adrianople. And now we come full circle back to that general, Parmenion. He was the father of King Attalus, and he had a chance to fix his son's marriage prospects when he defeated an Armenian king and took his daughter captive. He even planned to wed her to one of his sons and get a massive dowry. But before he could do anything, he was killed in battle. The sad part is that he wasn't even killed by the enemy. He accidentally fell off his horse during the charge and fractured his skull. Maybe if he had lived, his son Attalus might have fared better in battle. But as it stands, Rome crushed the army of Pontus and dealt a massive blow to King Perseus's war efforts. This victory secured Rome's control over the eastern Mediterranean and allowed them to continue their conquest of the Hellenistic kingdoms. But what happened to Perseus after his defeat at Adrianople? You can find out in this video, but that's it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching and I'll see you all next time.